The first day was quiet. Too quiet. Commander Thelvok received reports from his ground forces every hour. They found the crashed ship. They found footprints leading into the forest. They followed the trail until it disappeared into a stream that ran between the massive fungal trees. After that, nothing. 3,000 Varath soldiers spread across the forest in a wide net. They used heat sensors, motion trackers, and hunting beast bred for tracking. They found nothing. The 6 unknown creatures had vanished like smoke. They cannot hide forever, Thelvok told his officers. The forest is large, but not infinite. Continue the search. They will make a mistake. He was wrong about that dot when night fell on Kepler 442b. The temperature dropped sharply. The Vara soldiers were uncomfortable but not worried. Their armor kept them warm. Their weapons kept them safe. They made camp in small groups, scattered throughout the forest, watching and waiting. Yuna watched them from a ridge above. Through her binoculars, she could see 17 soldiers sitting around the heating unit, their weapons resting on the ground beside them. They were relaxed. They were confident. They had no idea she was there. Taiho, she whispered. The 3 on the left. Dohyun set the charges on the path behind them. Jisoo, kill their communications when I give the signal. Minho, Yoonji, watch our backs. Her team moved without sound. Weeks of training and years of experience made them ghosts in the purple darkness. They had no heavy weapons, no armor, no support. But they had something the Varath did not expect. They had the will to fight Dot at Yuna's signal. Everything happened at once. Jushu activated a jamming device that cut the Varath patrol off from their command. Taiho opened fire from the shadows, dropping 3 soldiers before they could reach their weapons. The others scrambled to respond, but they could not see where the shots came from. Then they ran. They ran toward the path behind them, the only escape route they could see. Dohyun pressed the trigger. The explosion lit up the night. The charges were small, made from materials found in the ship's emergency kit, but they were enough. The path became a crater. The soldiers became casualties. By the time Varath reinforcements arrived, the humans were gone. All they found were 17 bodies and a message carved into a fungal trunk in the Varath language. Jisoo had been studying their communications and had learned enough to write 3 words. Run, go, home. Commander Thelvok did not run. He sent more soldiers. Day 2 was worse. Taeho had collected weapons from the fallen patrol. Varath plasma rifles were different from human weapons, but the principle was the same. Point and shoot. He modified 3 of them overnight, turning them into motion-triggered mines. Dohyun helped him set them along a ravine that the Varath patrols used as a main route. An entire platoon walked into the trap. 40 soldiers, moving in formation, confident in their numbers. The first mine took out the front of the column. The second caught those who tried to retreat. The third waited for the survivors to group together before it fired. 28 soldiers died in less than a minute. The rest fled, screaming warnings into their radios. But those warnings never reached command. Jusoo had hacked into their communication frequency during the night. She was broadcasting false orders on the same channel, mixing real messages with lies. 3 battalions spent 6 hours marching in circles, chasing reports of human sightings that did not exist. While they marched, Dohyun was busy underground. The Varath had set up a supply depot in a cave system near their landing zone. It was supposed to be safe, protected by 200 soldiers and heavy guard posts. But Dohyun was an engineer who had grown up in the mining colonies of Mars. He understood caves, he understood rock, and he understood explosives. He spent the night crawling through narrow tunnels that the Varath had not bothered to check. He placed charges on the support structures. He set timers. He crawled back out. The cave collapsed at midday. 200 soldiers were buried alive. The supplies they were guarding were destroyed. The Vorath lost food, ammunition, and medical equipment in a single moment. Commander Thelvok finally began to worry. "How many of these creatures are there?" he demanded. "We estimate less than 10, his intelligence officer reported, based on the ship size and the pattern of attacks. Less than 10? Thelvok could not believe it. "We have lost 400 soldiers to less than 10 enemies?" "Yes, Commander." Thelvok considered his options. He had 3,000 soldiers on the ground. He had unlimited reinforcements in orbit. He had the finest military technology in the galaxy. And somehow, a handful of primitives from an unknown world were making him look like a fool. He requested more troops. High Command laughed at him. "You need more soldiers to capture a few lost explorers?" they asked. "Perhaps you are not fit for command, Thelvok." They did not understand. They could not see what was happening on the ground. They did not feel the fear that was spreading through his soldiers like a disease. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They struck without warning and disappeared without trace. They turned the forest itself into a weapon. On day 3, Yuna allowed her team to rest. They had been moving constantly, sleeping in shifts, eating cold rations, and fighting every moment. They were exhausted. But they were alive. "We're doing well," she told them. "Better than I expected." "They're scared," Taiho said. He had been watching the Vorath patrols change their patterns. They moved in larger groups now. They jumped at shadows. They fired at sounds that turned out to be nothing. "I've seen it before. They're losing their nerve." "Good," Yuna said. "Let's make it worse." That night, Dohyun left Vorath helmets on stakes around the perimeter of their main camp. Just helmets, nothing else. The message was clear. "We can reach you anywhere." Jisoo found a Vorath BROADCAST frequency used for morale messages and replaced it with something else. The screams of dying soldiers. The sounds of the cave collapse. The explosions from the ravine. She played it on loop all night, across every camp dot by morning. 37 Vorath soldiers had deserted. They walked into the forest and never came back. Whether they died or simply ran, no one knew. "Commander." Thelvok stared at the reports and felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Real fear. Not of death, but of something worse. He was losing this war. And he did not understand how in the forest. Yuna cleaned her weapon and planned the next attack. They had survived 3 days, maybe 17 more to go. It seemed impossible. But she looked at her team, at their tired faces and steady hands, and she knew the truth. Impossible was just a word. Humans had been doing impossible things since they first looked at the stars and decided to touch them. The Vorath wanted a war? They would get one. The Vorath Empire had ruled 17 star systems for over 2,000 years. They had crushed rebellions, conquered worlds, and built an army that made other species tremble. Their ships were fast. Their weapons were deadly. Their soldiers feared nothing, so when the sensors detected a small vessel entering their space near the mining colony of Kepler 4442b, High Commander Thelvok did not feel worried. He felt annoyed. Another lost trader, perhaps? Or maybe pirates stupid enough to wander into Empire territory. He sat in his command chair aboard the warship Burning Claw and studied the readings. The vessel was small, barely larger than a shuttle. It moved slowly through the asteroid field at the edge of the system, scanning everything it passed. What species? Thelvok asked. His sensor officer checked the data. Unknown configuration, Commander. The ship design matches nothing in our records. This caught Thelvok's attention. The Vorath knew every spacefaring species in this region of the galaxy. They had either conquered them or forced them into treaties. An unknown ship meant an unknown species. And unknown species meant opportunity. Send the intercept fleet, he ordered. 40 ships. Surround them and demand surrender. I want prisoners for questioning. The fleet moved out within the hour. 40 warships, each carrying 100 soldiers, spread across the darkness of space like a net closing around a fish. They expected no resistance. They expected fear and submission. That was what every species showed when facing the might of the Vorath. The small vessel detected them when they were still far away. Instead of running, it changed course and headed toward the planet below. Kepler 442b was a world of thick forests, heavy fog, and valuable minerals. The Vorath had been mining it for decades. Lieutenant Una Park watched the enemy ships on her screen and felt her stomach tighten. She was 32 years old, a veteran of the United Earth Reconnaissance Corps, and she had never seen anything like this. The ships were huge, covered in weapons, and there were so many of them. How many? Asked Sergeant Taiho Kim from behind her. He was her heavy weapons specialist, a quiet man with steady hands and calm eyes. 40 confirmed, replied Corporal Jisoo Han. She was handling communications and electronic systems, her fingers dancing across her console. They're trying to hail us. I can't understand the language yet. Una looked at her team. 6 people. That was all she had. Taiho with his guns. Jisoo with her computers. Private Minho Lee, their pilot, who was already pushing the ship toward the planet as fast as it could go. Private Yoonji Choi, their medic, who was strapping herself into her seat with a pale face. And Private Do Yoon Beek, their engineer, who was muttering calculations under his breath. They were a scout team. Their mission was simple: map the system, collect data, and return home. They carried sidearms, emergency supplies, and basic equipment. They were not soldiers. They were explorers. We're not going to outrun them, Minho said. He was young, only 24, but he was the best pilot Una had ever seen. They're too fast, but I can get us to the surface before they catch us. Do it, Una said. What's the plan after that? Taiho asked. He was already checking his weapon, a compact rifle that suddenly seemed very small. Una did not answer immediately. She was thinking. They could not fight 40 warships. They could not escape. Surrender meant capture, and she had no idea what these aliens would do to prisoners. She had heard stories about other species, about experiments and torture, and worse dot. No, they would not surrender. We land, she said finally. We hide. We survive. Earth will send help when we don't report back. We just need to stay alive until then. How long will that take? Yoonji asked. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. The beacon will send an automatic signal if we don't check in within 72 hours. After that, maybe 2 weeks for a response team to arrive. Maybe 3. 3 weeks, Do-Yoon said. Against 40 ships worth of soldiers. On an alien planet. With basic equipment. Yes, Una said simply. Do-Hyun was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, a strange and fierce expression. I've had worse odds. The ship entered the atmosphere of Kepler 442b, with fire trailing behind it. The alien fleet followed, but they were too slow. Minho was a master at his work, dodging and weaving through the clouds, using the planet's strange weather to hide their trail. He found a valley thick with fog and brought them down hard in a forest of giant mushrooms that reached toward the sky like purple towers. The landing was rough. The ship skidded through the soft ground, tearing through fungal growths and coming to rest against a massive trunk. Sparks flew. Metal groaned. But they were alive. Everyone out, Una ordered. Take everything we can carry. We're not coming back to this ship. They moved fast. 6 humans pulling supplies from a broken vessel while alien warships circled overhead. They took food, water purifiers, medical kits, tools, and weapons. Do-hyun grabbed the emergency explosives. Jisoo took every piece of communication equipment she could find. Taeho carried enough ammunition to last a small war. Above them, dropships began to descend through the clouds. The aliens were coming. Into the forest, Yuna said. Move. They disappeared into the purple shadows of the fungal forest, just as the first enemy soldiers touched ground. The Vorath had brought 3,000 troops for this operation. 3,000 against 6. Commander Thelvok watched from orbit, pleased with himself. This would be over quickly. A few hours at most. These unknown creatures would be captured, questioned, and broken. Then the Empire would learn everything about their species, their home world, and their weaknesses. He had no idea what he had just started. In the forest below, Yuna gathered her team in a small cave they had found. The entrance was hidden behind a curtain of hanging moss. The air smelled strange, like copper and rain. But they were safe for now. Listen to me, she said, looking at each of them. We are not going to die on this planet. We are not going to be captured. We are going to survive, and we are going to make them pay for every step they take in this forest. Is that clear? 5 voices answered as one. Yes, Lieutenant. Yuna nodded. Somewhere outside, 3,000 alien soldiers were beginning their hunt. They had better weapons, better armor, and better numbers. But they did not know what they were hunting. They were about to learn. 1 week had passed since the humans landed on Kepler 442b. Commander Thelvok stood in his command room and stared at the numbers on his screen. They made no sense. They could not be real. But they were. 12,000 soldiers committed to the ground operation. 2,100 casualties. Missing, dead, or too wounded to fight. All because of 6 creatures from an unknown world. He had stopped telling High Command the full truth. He reported minor setbacks, difficult terrain, unexpected resistance. He did not tell them that his soldiers were starting to refuse orders. He did not tell them that entire patrols vanished in the night without a sound. He did not tell them that he woke up shaking from nightmares about the forest. The humans had become ghosts, legends, monsters, Vorath. Soldiers whispered about them around their fires. They said the humans could see in complete darkness. They said the humans never slept, never ate, never stopped hunting. They said the humans were demons from the void between stars, sent to punish the Empire for its pride. None of this was true, of course. But fear does not need truth. Fear only needs shadows. Yuna and her team were surviving, but barely. They slept 4 hours per cycle, taking turns keeping watch. They ate cold rations and whatever Minho could hunt in the forest. Strange creatures lived among the fungal trees, and Minho had learned which ones were safe to eat. Yoonji treated their injuries with improvised medicine. She had studied the local plants and found several with useful properties. One reduced pain. Another stopped infection. A third could be processed into a paste that healed wounds faster than anything in their medical kit. We're becoming part of this planet, she said one night, grinding purple leaves into powder. Using its tools, learning its secrets. Whatever keeps us alive, Yuna replied. They had stopped counting their kills. It was too depressing to think about. These Vorath soldiers were just following orders. They had families somewhere, lives beyond this war. But it was them or the humans, and Yuna had made her choice. The Vorath changed their tactics. They stopped sending small patrols and started moving in large formations. 50 soldiers, 100 soldiers, all together. They thought numbers would protect them, but numbers meant noise. Numbers meant slow movement. Numbers meant easy targets. Taeho never fired from the same position twice. He would take a shot, drop a soldier, and disappear before anyone could find him. By the time the Vorath figured out where the shot came from, he was already somewhere else. Doyin turned the landscape into a weapon. He dug pits and covered them with local vegetation. He rigged fallen trees to collapse on anyone who touched them. He created false paths that led to cliffs or deep water or nests of aggressive creatures that lived beneath the surface. Jisoo fought a war of information. She intercepted Varath communications and fed them lies. She made commanders think attacks were coming from one direction while the real strike came from another. She found the frequencies they used for automated equipment and sent commands that caused chaos. One morning, every water purification unit in the main Varath camp shut down at the same time. The soldiers had to drink from streams that Yoonji had quietly contaminated with local spores. 200 soldiers became sick. 50 could no longer fight. Commander Thelvok ordered orbital bombardment. "Burn the forest," he told his fleet. "Burn it all. Kill everything." High Command refused. The minerals on Kepler 442b were too valuable. The mining operation was too important. They would not destroy a resource over a few annoying primitives. "Then send me reinforcements," Thelvok demanded. "Send me the Crimson Guard." There was silence on the communication channel. The Crimson Guard were the elite, the best soldiers in the Empire. They had never failed a mission. Sending them against a handful of unknown creatures seemed extreme, but Thelvok was desperate. And desperation made him persuasive. 3 days later, 500 Crimson Guard soldiers landed on the planet's surface. They wore red armor that had been designed to resist any weapon. They carried the finest equipment the Empire could produce. They had trained for decades, fought in countless battles, and never known defeat. Their commander was a veteran named Korthan. He had killed more enemies than most soldiers had ever seen. He looked at the forest with cold eyes and saw nothing to fear. "Where are these creatures?" he asked Thelvok. "Everywhere," Thelvok said. "And nowhere. They strike and vanish. They cannot be tracked. They cannot be predicted." Korthan laughed. "You have been fighting with common soldiers. The Crimson Guard is different. We will find these creatures and bring you their heads within 3 days." Yuna watched the new soldiers arrive from her position on a distant ridge. She saw their red armor, their confident movements, their superior weapons. She heard their communications through Jisoo's equipment. "Elite forces," Jisoo reported. 500 of them. "Best the Varath have." The team gathered to discuss their options. They were tired. They were running low on supplies. They had been fighting for a week without rest, without support, without hope. "We should hide," Minho suggested. "Wait them out. Let them search until they give up." "They won't give up," Taiho said. "Look at them. They're hunters. This is what they live for. If we run, they'll find us eventually. Then what?" Yoonji asked. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. She looked at her team, at their exhausted faces and determined eyes. They had done the impossible already. They had held off an army with nothing but courage and creativity. But this was different. These new soldiers were dangerous. Maybe more dangerous than anything they had faced before. Then she smiled. A strange, fierce smile that made her team sit up straighter. "Finally," she said. "A challenge. What do you mean?" Do-hyun asked. "I mean, we've been fighting amateurs. Soldiers who never expected real resistance. They were easy to scare, easy to confuse, easy to hurt." Yuna stood and looked toward the enemy camp. "These new ones will be harder. But harder doesn't mean impossible. It just means we have to be better." She turned back to her team. "We've been surviving, hiding, running, reacting to what they do." Her voice grew stronger. "No more. Starting now, we go on the offensive. We don't wait for them to find us. We hunt them. We show these elite soldiers what humans can really do." Taiho smiled and checked his weapon. Dohyun started calculating where to place his next traps. Jisoo began scanning for weak points in the enemy's communication network. Minho planned escape routes. Yoonji prepared medical supplies. They were 6 exhausted humans against 500 of the finest warriors in the galaxy. The Crimson Guard, expected to be the hunters. They were about to discover they were the prey. The Crimson Guard moved through the forest like a red tide. 500 soldiers in perfect formation, covering every angle, watching every shadow. They had trained for this. They were ready for anything, or so they thought. Commander Korthan led from the front. He wanted to see these mysterious creatures for himself. He wanted to understand what had terrified regular soldiers so badly. He expected to find clever animals, nothing more. The first attack came at dawn on the second day. A Crimson Guard soldier stepped on what looked like solid ground. The ground opened beneath him, and he fell into a pit filled with sharpened stakes. He died before he could scream. The soldier next to him turned to help. A wire caught his ankle. An explosion followed. 3 more soldiers fell. The formation scattered. They took cover behind fungal trees and searched for targets. They saw nothing, heard nothing. The forest was silent. Then a voice echoed through their communication channel. A female voice, speaking in broken Vorath language. 1 day, 12 dead. Keep coming. Korthan felt something he had not felt in decades. Uncertainty. The humans had changed their tactics. They no longer waited to be found. They struck first, struck hard, and struck where the enemy least expected. Taeho had perfected his method. He found positions that seemed impossible to reach. Ledges that no creature should be able to climb. Holes that nobody should fit through. From these positions, he fired single shots at carefully chosen targets. Leaders. Radio operators. Anyone giving orders. The Crimson Guard's formation began to break. Without leadership, without communication, even elite soldiers became confused. Dohyun's traps were everywhere. He had spent days preparing the battleground. Pitfalls covered by local plants. Explosives hidden in tree trunks. Tripwires connected to swinging weights that could crush armor. The forest itself had become a weapon. Jisoo played games with their minds. She found a way to hack into their helmet displays. Suddenly, soldiers saw enemies that were not there. They fired at shadows. They attacked each other. One squad killed 3 of their own members before they realized what was happening. Minho became a ghost. He moved through the forest faster than anyone believed possible, carrying messages between the team, scouting enemy positions, leading pursuers into ambush. He stole a Vorath dropship from a supply point and flew it directly into their forward command post. The explosion killed 50 soldiers and destroyed their main communication center. For 6 hours, the Crimson Guard had no contact with their fleet in orbit. Unji found her own way to fight. She identified a local fungus that released spores when disturbed. These spores cause temporary blindness in most species, including the Vorath. She collected the fungus and created bombs filled with concentrated spores. When one of these bombs exploded in the middle of a Crimson Guard formation, 80 soldiers lost their sight at once. They stumbled blindly through the forest, calling for help, walking into traps and off cliffs. 30 died before the others could find them. Korthan tried to adapt. He gathered his remaining forces into a tight defensive position. He called for reinforcements from orbit. He prepared for a siege, but there was no siege. The humans did not attack directly. They did not have to. Instead, they surrounded the position and waited. Night came. The Crimson Guard could not sleep. Every sound in the forest might be an attack. Every shadow might hide a human. They posted guards on every side, but guards kept disappearing. One moment they were there. The next moment, gone. Taeho had learned to move without sound. He killed guards with a knife, not a gun. Silently, efficiently, the bodies were found hours later, arranged in patterns that meant nothing but looked terrifying. By the third day, the Crimson Guard numbered only 87 soldiers. Corthan was still alive, but he was broken. His confidence was gone. His strategy was in ruins. His elite warriors were dying one by one, and he could not stop it. Do-Hyun planted charges around their own ammunition depot. The Vorath had brought enough explosives to level a city. Now those explosives belonged to the humans. The blast lit up the night sky. It could be seen from orbit. Commander Thelvok watched from his ship and felt his heart sink. The Crimson Guard, his last hope, was being destroyed by 6 primitives with stolen equipment. Jisoo sent a message directly to Thelvok's personal terminal. She had figured out his access codes days ago. "We can do this forever," the message said. "Can you?" Thelvok did not reply. He was too busy trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Corthan gathered his remaining soldiers and tried to retreat. They moved toward the landing zone, hoping to reach their dropships and escape. They abandoned their equipment, they're wounded, they're dead. They just wanted to survive. Yuna let them run. She had no interest in killing soldiers who were already broken, but she made sure they knew they were being watched. She appeared on ridges above them, visible for just a moment before disappearing. She wanted them to see her face. She wanted them to remember, of the 500 Crimson Guard who had landed on Kepler 442b, only 63 made it back to orbit. They were the finest warriors in the Varth Empire. They had been defeated by 6 humans. Commander Thelvok looked at the survivors and saw the truth in their eyes. Fear. Deep, permanent fear. They would never be the same again. What are these creatures? He asked Corthan. Corthan was silent for a long moment. His red armor was dented and scorched. His weapons were gone. He looked like a soldier who had fought a war and lost. "I don't know," he finally said, "but they are not like anything we have ever faced. They do not fight like warriors. They fight like something else. Something that does not know how to give up. Something that becomes more dangerous the more you hurt it." He looked at Thelvok with empty eyes. "I think we have made a terrible mistake," he said. "I think we have woken something that should have been left sleeping." On the planet below, Yuna sat with her team in their hidden cave. They were exhausted beyond words. Minho had a broken rib. Yoonji had burns on her hands from handling chemicals. Do-Hyun had not slept in 3 days. Taiho was running low on ammunition. Jisoo's equipment was failing, but they were alive. And they had won. How much longer? Yoonji asked quietly. Yuna checked her calculations. Maybe 1 more week. If the beacon worked. If help is coming. If, Minho repeated. If, Yuna agreed. They sat in silence, listening to the alien forest around them. 17 days of fighting. Thousands of enemy soldiers faced. Hundreds killed. And somehow, impossibly, they were still here. Taiho started laughing softly. The others looked at him. "What's funny?" Do-Hyun asked. "Nothing," Taiho said, still laughing. "Everything. 6 people against an empire. And we're winning." One by one, the others started laughing too. It was the laughter of exhaustion, of relief, of madness. They laughed until tears ran down their faces. Then they stopped, rested, and prepared for whatever came next. The war was not over yet. Day 23 began like all the others. Yuna woke before dawn, checked her equipment, and prepared for another day of survival. Her team was barely holding together. They had pushed themselves beyond every limit, fought through injuries and exhaustion, survived on determination alone. But today felt different. Today, the forest was quiet in a new way. Jisoo sat up suddenly, her eyes wide. She was listening to something through her communication equipment. something that made her hands shake. "Lieutenant," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm picking up a signal." Human signal. Military frequency. The others gathered around her. They heard static, then words. Clear, beautiful, impossible words. "This is Admiral Sunho Jang of the Earth Battle Group Indomitable. Scout Team 7, respond if you can hear this transmission. We are entering the system. Rescue is coming." No one spoke. Yoonji started crying. Minho fell to his knees. Do-hyun covered his face with his hands. Taiho stood very still, his jaw tight, his eyes wet. Yuna took the communicator from Jisoo. "Admiral Jang, this is Lieutenant Yuna Park, Scout Team 7. We read you loud and clear." Her voice was steady despite everything. "It's good to hear a friendly voice. Lieutenant Park, we received your emergency beacon 12 days ago. What is your status?" Yuna looked at her team. Battered, broken, exhausted. But alive. 6 survivors, Admiral. Minor injuries. We're operational. There was a pause on the other end. Understood. We're tracking significant Varth military presence in orbit. We'll handle them first, then extract your team. Stay safe for a little longer. We've been staying safe for 23 days, sir. We can manage a few more hours. Above the planet, Admiral Jang looked at his tactical display. The Varth fleet numbered over 40 ships, reduced from their original strength, but still formidable. His battle group had 12 vessels. "All ships, attack formation," he ordered. "Let's bring our people home." The battle lasted 17 minutes. Human ships were faster, more advanced, and commanded by crews who knew their people were waiting below. The Varth fought hard, but they were already broken. 3 weeks of failure had destroyed their confidence. When the first Varath cruiser exploded, the rest of the fleet began to scatter. Commander Thelvok watched from his command ship as everything fell apart. His fleet, his soldiers, his reputation, all gone. He tried to order a retreat, but it was too late. Human Marines were already boarding his vessel. I found him on the bridge, standing alone among the bodies of his officers. He did not resist when they took him prisoner. There was nothing left to fight for. Marines landed on the planet's surface an hour later. 20 soldiers fully armed and armored, ready for anything. They found the scout team waiting at a designated extraction point. Yuna stepped forward to meet them. She was thin, dirty, and wearing clothes that had been patched a dozen times. Her weapon was almost empty. Her face showed every hour of the 23 days she had spent fighting for her life, but she stood straight. She saluted properly. She was still a soldier. "Lieutenant Park reporting," she said. "Scout Team 7 ready for extraction." The Marine captain stared at her. Then, at the rest of the team, these 5 exhausted humans who had held off an empire. "Lieutenant," he said slowly, "are you aware that you just fought the entire Varth regional military?" Yuna almost smiled. "We didn't have much choice, Captain." Commander Thelvok was brought aboard the S Indomitable in restraints. Admiral Jang wanted to speak with him personally. He wanted to understand what had happened on the planet below. They met in a secure room, guards at every door. Thelvok was still wearing his damaged armor. Jang wore the simple uniform of an Earth admiral. "Your people killed thousands of my soldiers," Thelvok said. His voice was flat, empty. "Your army was more skilled than anything we expected. We were not prepared for such a force." "Army?" Admiral Jang raised an eyebrow. "Commander, how many human soldiers do you think you are fighting?" Thelvok had considered this question for days. Based on the attacks, the damage, the tactical brilliance displayed, he had made calculations. Hundreds at minimum. Perhaps 1,000 specially trained warriors operating in small groups throughout the forest. The Admiral was silent for a moment. Then he activated a screen on the wall. 6 faces appeared. 6 names. 6 service records. "This is everyone who was on that planet," Jang said quietly. "Lieutenant Park, Sergeant Kim, Corporal Han, Privates Lee, Choi, and Beek. 6 people. Not soldiers, commander, scouts. Their mission was to map the system and return. They carried sidearms, emergency supplies, and basic equipment." Thelvok stared at the screen. His mandibles clicked in disbelief. "That's impossible. I have the records. I have the testimony. I have the evidence." Jang leaned forward. "You sent 18,000 soldiers against 6 humans. You lost over 6,000. The rest were too broken to continue fighting. And you never even came close to capturing them." 6, Thelvok repeated. He could not process the information. "Only 6. Only 6. And Commander, I want you to understand something." Jang's voice hardened. These 6 were not special forces. They were not elite warriors. They were a standard reconnaissance team on a routine mission. They simply refused to die. The room fell silent. Thelvok felt the weight of the revelation crushing him. Everything he believed about his species, his military, his empire, was wrong. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked. "I want you to go home," Jang said. "I want you to tell your leaders exactly what happened here. Every detail. Every failure. Every moment where 6 tired humans made your armies look like children playing at war. And then I want you to deliver a message." Jang stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "Tell them that what they faced here was not a war. It was not an invasion. It was not even a battle. It was a scouting team defending themselves with whatever they had." He turned back to Thelvok. "Tell them that if 6 of our scouts did this to you, imagine what happens when we send soldiers who are actually trying." 1 month later, Lieutenant Yuna Park stood on a stage in Tokyo and received the Silver Star for exceptional valor. Her team stood beside her, wearing their dress uniforms, looking uncomfortable in front of the cameras. Reporters asked her questions about her experience. How did she survive? What was her strategy? How did it feel to defeat an empire? She gave the same answer every time. "We were just doing our jobs," she said. "We're not special." Any human team would have done the same. In the halls of the Varith Empire, her words were repeated with fear. They studied her face, her words, her actions. They tried to understand how such an ordinary creature could be so dangerous. They never did understand, because the truth was simple. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the fastest. They were not the most technologically advanced, but they were something else. Something the galaxy had never seen before. They were the species that simply refused to quit. 3 months after the incident at Kepler 442b, the Varith Empire requested peace negotiations. They had reviewed the reports, studied the data, and reached a conclusion. Going to war with humanity would be suicide. Yuna Park returned to active duty. She requested another scouting assignment, another ship, another chance to explore the unknown. When asked why, she shrugged. "There are more stars out there," she said. "Someone needs to map them." The galaxy watched humanity with new eyes after that day. They had learned a lesson that would never be forgotten. Do not fight humans. And if you must fight them, bring more soldiers than you think you need. Then double that number. Then pray it will be enough. It won't be.